Yuji and Riku were both launched out from the arena, as standing in front of them was a polymorphic soul isomer, similar to the one that Yuji had fought back in Shibuya, but physically they were buffer and taller. But more than that, Yuji was able to sense right off the bat just by its cursed energy and presence alone that it was going to be stronger than the one he did fight in Shibuya. He also took a brief moment to warn Riku about its ability to spit out acid, so they would have to be careful from any projectiles that came out from the beast. Riku nodded, so preparing to fight alongside Yuji, red lightning crackling right around his body. They needed to eliminate this thing and fast. After all, Riku wanted to make sure he could back up Nagumo as fast as possible. Sure, he knew Nagumo was incredibly powerful. He had no doubts about her power, but he still wanted to make sure he could back her up, especially with the opponent they were facing off against and everything they had heard about them so far. But now they were also able to tell they were clearly stronger than what they were in Shibuya. Yuji was in a similar boat, not because he wanted to help Nagumo, but more importantly because he wanted to put Mahito down himself, as cursed energy flared up and rose around his own body. He needed to put Mahito down. He saw this as his own burden. As a thought looped through Yuji's head, the thought that this was all his fault. If he could just eliminate Mahito, if he had just eliminated Mahito when they first fought, none of this would be happening. But there was no change in the past. All they could really do was make sure Mahito died right here and now. But first they would need to get past this opponent. The polymorphic soul isomer would stare down both of its opponents. This polymorphic soul isomer was in particular designed in order to fight against Yuji Itadori. However, now they had an unknown against them, this sorcerer who was next to them. No matter, the polymorphic soul isomer would figure out a way to beat them both. The three opponents stared each other down, all of their energies flaring up against each other, like a wave of tension overrode the entire area. Until suddenly they all sensed the ground burning underneath the polymorphic soul isomer, as it jumped right towards Yuji and Riku, steam coming off of its body while it moved. Yuji moved right in front of Riku, lifting up both of his arms in a cross formation in order to take the blow. However, this thing's physical power was nothing to scoff at, as it ended up pushing Yuji back much further than he was expecting to, pushing Yuji back by a couple of feet. Riku then jumped over Yuji and told Yuji he doesn't need to worry about protecting him. After all, Riku can take his punches, he'll be able to take whatever this thing is quite fine. Before he landed behind the polymorphic soul isomer and focused lightning towards his hand and landed a blow, shocking it in that move and making an opening for Yuji to land a blow. Yuji focused a great deal of his own curse energy towards his fist, before punching it straight in the face, sending it skidding backwards as Riku took this chance in order to spin around it and land a palm strike on its side. However, both of them during their blows were able to notice something right off the bat. This polymorphic soul isomer's body was hot. Very hot, almost like they were putting their hand inside of an oven, which would likely explain where that steam came off of. However, more importantly, they were able to notice that this thing had durable skin, as the polymorphic soul isomer slowly forced itself to get back up, staring towards both of its opponents, as the steam around its body began to increase further and further, increasing to such a point that it was heating up the entire area they were fighting in, before the heat was then focused and compressing down to be around both of their fists. The polymorphic soul isomer's curse technique allowed it to heat up its own body, creating a large amount of steam. It could use that in order to amplify its own physical blows, or launch out steam as attacks towards its opponents. This polymorphic soul isomer was made from a sorcerer that Mahito had captured, being Mahito's right hand. It then pulsed out both of their fists, releasing a large wave of steam that was combined into one, both towards Riku and Yuji. Yuji and Riku both jumped upwards in order to avoid the wave of steam, but even until they successfully managed to avoid it, they were still able to feel the heat from it, as the polymorphic soul isomer jumped after the both of them, winding up both of their fists and punching the both of them, launching Yuji and Riku away from each other. And once all three of them landed on the ground, the polymorphic soul isomer made its choice. It rushed right towards Yuji, with the polymorphic soul isomer going on the offensive, pressuring Yuji and pushing him back with each blow. However, even though it was able to push him back, Yuji was still able to keep up pretty well. While they were strong, they did lack skill in comparison to Yuji's own natural hand-to-hand ability, especially with everything that Toji had trained into Yuji. Toji had made sure to refine Yuji's martial arts skill, as Yuji was using several redirections he had learned from Toji, as Yuji then used one hand to redirect their blow while using the other to pull them into a punch to the face, leading to the beast opening their mouth and firing a large burst of steam at Yuji's face. However, Yuji ducked right underneath it before using the explosive power from him getting up in order to land a blow right on its gut, focusing a lot of curse energy alongside the blow. Yuji was innately amazing at hand-to-hand combat, but thanks to Toji's training, he had effectively put the skill of a special ops soldier into a superhuman body with curse energy to amplify it. Yuji had transcended the limits of grade 1. And after he punched the polymorphic soul isomer in the gut, he punched it right in the face, launching it backwards even further, as Yuji then focused curse energy towards his left hand, rushing right towards the polymorphic soul isomer, before purple curse energy similar to the one Mahito possessed erupted around its own right hand. And their eye almost glowed a bit, almost like the polymorphic soul isomer was updating its combat ability. The polymorphic Soul Isomer was figuring out how to use his curse energy better and get stronger, as both of their fists clashed, causing a small shockwave to echo throughout the area. Steam then began to erupt off of its hands, using that steam to amplify its power even further, making every single one of their blows explosive. Even when they clashed fists, a wave of steam ended up hitting Yuji repeatedly, before it then opened its mouth, about to fire out a large burst of acid right towards Yuji. However, before it could, it felt lightning crackle around its body, causing its mouth to be forced to be closed and for it to be forced to swallow the acid. Riku had now returned to the battlefield, as he returned back to his lightning form for a moment, appearing right in front of its face and palm striking it in the face hard. As Riku then landed next to Yuji, the both of them lifted up their arms together. A feel in the air changed slightly, as Riku and Yuji were now starting to adjust to each other. Unlike someone like Yuji and Megumi, they were able to adjust to each other's combat styles fine. They had fought against each other and knew each other's weaknesses, so the two of them could sink in a bit easier, especially with their styles being quite complementary of each other. This time, instead of Yuji leading the charge, Riku directly went to lead the charge. The polymorphic Soul Isomer was able to sense the change in the air, which worried it even further. It needed to make sure both of its opponents went down. The polymorphic Soul Isomer then winded up its fist and attempted to land a large punch on Riku's face. However, Riku quickly transmuted his body into electricity, turning to a red bolt of lightning in order to avoid the blow before reforming himself, landing an elbow on its chest, sending lightning to crackle through its body before returning back to that red lightning form, opening up a blow for Yuji to land. As Yuji focused curse energy towards his fist, landing a punch straight on its chest. However, this time the punch wasn't as strong, causing the polymorphic Soul Isomer to be pushed backwards. However, while it was being pushed backwards, Riku returned, cycling around its entire body as red lightning before reforming, landing a punch on its side. And while the polymorphic Soul Isomer tried to counter, Riku quickly returned his body to lightning, before reforming his whole body and landing a kick on its face. This was only subbed out for Yuji, as Yuji went for another punch on its chest, before landing another and another, each of them going for the same spots, but also being weaker than the punches he was landing before. As Yuji then turned his head slightly out the way, in order to avoid the red lightning bolt going straight past his head. That red lightning bolt was the form that Riku had transported himself into, before Riku reformed himself, now forming behind its back. As Riku and Yuji began to release a combo of barrages, Yuji mostly going for its chest, however he was starting to go for other parts on its front. But each time he went for a blow to not land on its chest, he ended up amplifying the blow with normal curse energy, making it just as strong as before, if not a bit stronger. However, each time he landed a blow on its chest specifically, he was holding back. Meanwhile, Riku was going for all across its body, using his technique in order to repeatedly stun it in order to make it easier for Yuji to land blows. The polymorphic Soul Isomer was twitching a bit in anger. It was feeling so much pain. Even though it was rather durable, it wasn't able to take this much forever, as the steam around it rapidly began to increase, before releasing a large wave of steam, launching both Yuji and Riku away. As it then focusing a great deal of curse energy towards its fist, over 50% of its own curse energy that it was generating, and more. With all of the pain it had been feeling, it led to a great amount of negative emotion spawning, all of it being constantly turned into curse energy in order to fuel this beast more and more, before it then rocketed right towards Yuji, focusing that purple curse energy around, making its fist glow entirely purple. However, right before the fist could attempt to even get close to Yuji, suddenly it felt an impact land on its chest, and another, and several, tens of impacts all at once landing, cracking its entire chest, as the focus could be felt in the air, not just from Yuji but from Riku as well, as Riku returned back to his lightning form, appearing right at its back, while at the same time Yuji focused a large amount of curse energy around his fist. As Riku then turns his body back into lightning, appearing right beside Yuji, focusing that same amount of curse energy around his own fist as well. And at the same time, the both of them landed a punch right on the polymorphic Soul Isomer's chest, right at its weakest point. And from that punch, the sparks of red and black crackled all throughout the area, not just Yuji's black flash, but Riku's as well, sending the polymorphic Soul Isomer rocketing backwards and killing it in a single blow. And it was exhilarating for Riku. Riku had landed a black flash in the past, but he had only managed to do so once, so being able to do it again, it was just quite a feeling that he loved. As he told Yuji, the two of them needed to work together more often because this was a lot of fun. However, Yuji had a different look on his face, one more of sadness, as he walked towards the polymorphic Soul Isomer and closed their eyes. He could see it. This polymorphic Soul Isomer was the result of Mahito's experiment. They clearly did not want to be here. They were put through so much pain and were forced to die just because of Mahito. He didn't even know how many people were required to make something that powerful, but he could tell the amount was a lot. As curse energy erupted off of Yuji's body, one of rage that was turned into curse energy near instantly. Riku would have blinked. He had to admit he was surprised, but at the same time he did get why. It was pretty clear to him that Yuji was a pretty good guy, and he hated Mahito with all his guts. So he told Yuji the two of them needed to head over to Nagamon quick. Nagamon was the one fighting Mahito right now. And with that knowledge, the both of them began to rush right towards Nagamon's direction. At the same time that Yuji and Riku had battled against the polymorphic Soul Isomer, Nobara and Sumire were battling off against theirs. It was similar in shape to the previous, however it was a bit smaller in frame, but it was replaced with the fact that it had wings. Sumire and Nobara were both still a little bit exhausted from their fight, but they were rather confident they could at least take this polymorphic soul isomer down. However, they did have a secondary target. They could see Maito had created something that had the intention of creating more cursed spirits, which was going to add more backup and reinforcement to Maito, so they needed to eliminate this polymorphic soul isomer and then eliminate that next. Nobara in particular informing Sumire what it was. After all, she had battled against one of them back in Shibuya. It was able to create an incredibly strong cursed spirit based on using humans and increasing their negative amount of emotions they were feeling. Upon hearing that, Sumire nodded in agreement, as she looked towards the opponent facing in front of them and asked if Nobara had any more information about that. Nobara told them that it was similar to the opponent Yuji fought against in Shibuya, so likely high physical stats as well as the ability to release acid, though it was pretty clear it also had wings, which meant it might be a little bit different. They weren't too sure yet. Sumire nodded while taking out her own blade in preparation. Both of them stared down their opponent, as the polymorphic soul isomer's hands began to shapeshift, changing to that of Blade itself. Sumire looked back to Nobara and told her to stay as range support for now. She was going to handle it up front. But the polymorphic soul isomer in a surprising burst of speed rushed right towards Sumire and Nobara, closing the distance faster than either of them were initially expecting, as it attempted to slash at both of them with its arms, but Sumire was able to lift up her blade and redirect it, blocking one of the slashes while kicking Nobara away in order for her to go in the back. As the two's blades clashed, when Nobara lifted up one of her nails and slammed it against her hammer, launching the nail right towards its direction, leading to Sumire doing a backflip, flipping right over the nail. And in the flip, she slashed against the nail, using her own power to amplify the power of the nail even further. In order to counter, they lifted up both of their arm blades, using it to block against the nail, but even with them doing that, they were pushed back by it. Sumire took that as her chance to rush forward, a purple flame completely engulfing her blade before he sliced right at the polymorphic soul isomer's stomach, a successful cut that wounded their body, though the cut wasn't too deep. However, Sumire wasn't done yet, as she quickly landed another cut across their chest. And as she was preparing to land a cut across their neck, the polymorphic soul isomer was able to block, using both of their sword arms in order to do so. But as the two of them were clashing, Sumire took this chance to land a kick on her side, reinforcing her leg with curse energy in order to amplify the blow, before she jumped backwards as Nobara launched 4 more nails right towards the polymorphic soul isomer's direction. And while they were able to deflect 2 of them landed right on their shoulders, as Nobara snapped her fingers, activating Hairpin with both in order to stab the curse energy right into their shoulders. Sumire took this chance to rush down, as she rushed right towards the polymorphic soul isomer, aiming to cut their neck and trying to cut off their head in one move. However, before Sumire could reach them, they flapped their wings, sending them flying high up into the air in order to avoid the both of them. Sumire then jumped back towards Nobara, as she told them that the two of them were going to have to swap plans now. Sumire was going to offer cover, Nobara was now going to be the main attacker for them, with Nobara in turn making a comment about how she was always the main attacker. Sumire simply rolled her eyes, though underneath her scarf she did smirk a little bit, and that confidence was entertaining. Before the polymorphic soul isomer opened up their mouth, releasing several bursts of acid right towards the both of them. Furthermore, each of them were glowing purple, showing that they were being enhanced by curse energy even further. Nobara and Sumire both knew they did not want to get hit by that, so Nobara and Sumire jumped to the left in order to avoid the wave of acid coming towards them. However, they were persistent. Unlike the polymorphic soul isomer that Yuji had fought against in Shibuya, this one had a much more rapid ability to fire out acid, so it began to rapid fire acid right towards the both of them, almost like it was a machine gun. Seeing that dodging was going to do them no good, she decided to stop, as she focused, resolving her curse energy before beginning to cut through each of the bursts of acid that were coming towards them. As she then began to jump towards the polymorphic soul isomer, slicing through each of the bursts of acid as she was making her way to it. Nobara also saw this as her chance as she focused a large amount of curse energy to her hammer, using that slam in order to launch herself into the air and fast. As she rocketed past both Sumire as well as the polymorphic soul isomer, catching Sumire and the polymorphic soul isomer slightly off guard. And as the polymorphic soul isomer was preparing to turn around in order to try and hit Nobara, suddenly it felt a slash of purple fire land on its back, and another. Sumire was relentless as a fighter, being trained to take any opportunity and advantage she could see, and now she was doing so, which led the polymorphic soul isomer to turn its head in order to try and face off against Sumire. But that was a big mistake, as Nobara focused a great deal of curse energy right into that nail, before slamming the nail down hard, aiming right for the polymorphic soul isomer's back. And while it did successfully impale right into the polymorphic soul isomer's back, it didn't activate Hairpin, which slightly confused the polymorphic soul isomer, but it didn't have much time to focus or worry about that, as Sumire was quick to follow that up, stopping instead to wing combat. The purple flames around her blade faded, being replaced with purple butterfly wings on her back, as she rocketed right towards it, her speed being far more noticeable even in this state, as she quickly landed a barrage of cuts right on the polymorphic soul isomer's chest. While they were no longer amplified by her flames, they still did quite a bit of damage, as she jumped backwards. And as the polymorphic soul isomer reached towards Sumire to try and grab her leg, suddenly Nobara snapped her fingers. But this wasn't the standard hairpin that they activated either. This was different, as it's shown something that even Sumire hadn't seen during their match. because rather than one massive curse energy stab going through their body, suddenly felt several, no, tens of small impales going all across their body. Small little pricks that were targeting all across the polymorphic soul isomer's body. This was in particular an amazing move to use against polymorphic soul isomers, due to the fact they were fused with so many souls in one body. And a technique that fully targeted every single part of the body and soul like this, well, it was a full counter. As it then twitched in pain, starting to cough up a little bit of blood and lose focus, but Nobara wasn't done yet, with Nobara going right down onto the polymorphic soul isomer and slamming it hard into the ground, as she pinned it down before taking out one of her nails and slamming it against her hammer, aiming right for its head in order to finish off the polymorphic soul isomer in one final move. As Sumire landed down next to Nobara, she didn't have to admit she was rather impressed. She always took Nobara to be more of a support type, but she had really proven herself to be able to be put on the main lines right alongside the other two. But neither of them were done yet. They still had one thing left they needed to take out, as they looked into the distance and saw what looked to be a centipede, a rather massive centipede made out of human flesh. But out from their body, low-level curses were spawning, grade 3 and grade 2 curses. A cursed spirit farm that Mahito had created. Nobara was rather familiar with this cursed spirit farm, though the one she fought against had a different purpose. That one wasn't trying to mass produce curses, but rather focus so much negative emotions into one thing in order to make a strong curse. This creature on the other hand only had one purpose, and that was to mass produce curses all across the area to make sure nobody could interfere with Mahito's battle. As Sumire looked over to Nobara and asked if she could perform that move again, they would likely need to perform it on something like this. Nobara gave a thumbs up. She was more than confident that she could do it again, as Sumire told her that she was going to act as cover for her. She was going to make a path for Nobara to do so. Nobara gave her a thumbs up as she picked up one of her nails. At the same time, Sumire's wings faded, returning back to her blade, coating it completely in that same purple flame, as the purple flame began to get bigger and bigger in size. Someone like Riku would have more than likely been better for a job like this, but Sumire was the second best option. All she needed to do was kill a large amount of curses in order for Nobara to have a target. As Sumire then jumped forward, resulting in all of the curses turning towards her in order to face off against her, as they all began to rapidly rush towards her, trying to make a massive wall of cursed spirits. But seeing this, Sumire began to spin around rapidly, almost like she was a drill made out of fire, executing each and every single one of the curses that she was passing by. It helped even further that most of these were only grade 2 and grade 3 curses. They weren't smart enough to be able to communicate, so only some of them were trying to form a wall. Not all of them were. Some of them were trying to rush forward, trying to intercept the attack against Sumire, but they were failing. No grade 2 curse was going to be able to get past this, as she eventually did succeed, making a hole for Nobara to launch her nail through, sending 2 more waves of fire slashes out in order to execute as many curses as possible. As Nobara threw up the nail before slamming it hard with the hammer, the nail flying fast like a rocket right towards the centipede's face, impaling right through it, increasing all the negative emotions and pain that the centipede was feeling for a moment. But before more cursed spirits could spawn, Nobara quickly activated Hairpin, using Hairpin crucifix to execute in a single move, as Sumire landed right next to Nobara with some heavy breaths. She was somewhat tired from that move. Not to mention the polymorphic soul isomer and Nobara, who she had both battled against previously, so she was starting to run a little bit low on stamina. Nobara could feel it herself as well. She was starting to get a bit drained. And while she was tempted to go in and help even more, she felt at this point she might have been a burden with how low on stamina she was. She was also starting to run a little bit low on nails. And while Nobara did want to go in to help against Mahito, she could hear the screams of several people around them. There were still people they needed to be saved, and that was their priority. Everybody else could handle Mahito and the others. Those other people needed them right now. So both Nobara and Sumire moved in order to help as many people as they could. Now up next, I do want to spend some time talking about the sponsor to the channel, Fan Dominion, an old friend of the channel that has a ton of cool anime merch, especially on the JJK side of things, but cool merch overall. And if you're looking for something that looks stylish, something that you can wear out in public and not be called a weeb for, but at the same time be recognized by your friends for wearing something really cool, they have good things in store for you. Or are you looking for something to complete your cosplay with? Well, Fan Dominion has you covered, and don't worry, they aren't expensive at all. And on top of that, if you use my code both in the description as well as on screen now, you can get a 10% discount. Yep, that's right, a 10% discount. However, now I'm going to spend some time showing off their beautiful catalog. And if you like any of this merch and any of this merch looks awesome to you, remember our code EF10 and you'll be able to get a 10% discount. Anyways, I'm going to see y'all later.